Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the organizers of the Second Asia Pacific Adaptation Forum, it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to your forum. The organizers has created this opportunity for you, and this is your forum. Your participation signifies the importance of the adaptation to climate change in this region. The diversity of the participants demonstrate the cross-cutting nature of the climate change adaptation. The organizers hope you will find the program of the forum useful and interactive to share your experiences and the knowledge on the climate change adaptation in the regions. In your pack, you have the details of their bio, so please, you have the information. But it's my honor to request Her Excellency Anna Lindstedt, the Ambassador for the Climate Change Ministry of the Environment, Government of Sweden, to deliver her welcome remarks. Yes, if you desire, yes, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you all to this forum, and I'm deeply honored to be the first speaker today. It's also very nice to be here in Bangkok. I have spent a big part of my diplomatic career living in and working with Asia. Last Saturday, being out on a field visit to learn more about adaptation to climate change in action at the local level, I experienced a very strong feeling of coming home. Coming home to Southeast Asia, and this time in my new capacity as Sweden's Ambassador for Climate Change. Climate change is a pressing global challenge facing human society. It risks overturning development achievements and threatens future growth. All scientific results point in the same direction. We need urgent and concerted action in order to minimize temperature increase, as well as to be able to adapt to present and future changes. I'm therefore delighted that the Regional Climate Change Adaptation Knowledge Platform for Asia and the Asia-Pacific Adaptation Network have brought us all here.
For Thai people and Southeast Asian countries which suffered from record floods last year, I was greatly impressed by the effort to realize this forum only 5 months after the flooding. We respect the government and people's capacity in dealing with the disaster and resilience shown by the government and the people to resume normal life and rebuild communities. To help those who were affected by the flood, Japan provided emergency assistance to the kingdom. At the same time, we greatly appreciate the assistance and support from the world after the Great Eastern Japan earthquake, which occurred on 11th of March last year. Yesterday was the first anniversary of the earthquake in Japan.
Many of you are people I don't know from the past. Just to briefly introduce myself, I'm new at UNEP, in charge of climate change adaptation globally. But my background is very much in other aspects of climate change research, understanding the fundamental nature of climate modeling, climate reconstruction, and climate observations and monitoring. Each time I've moved from one of these climate fields to another, I've found an entirely new community of people operating, and perhaps part of that is our challenge as we grapple with adaptation. I'd like to just leave you with one point before I introduce our executive director, who will, Achim Steiner, who will present with a brief video. Many of the challenges in adaptation that I've heard about have concentrated on taking global models, downscaling them to local challenges, which are our adaptation challenges. And although that's a very valuable activity, and I'd encourage you all to recognize the value of these models, another very important aspect of climate variability and change is local information. Information on long-term variability, both in the instrumental record and in the paleo records that we have available to us. So it's an interesting juxtaposition where we went from where our best knowledge of long-term variability and change in hydrological balance is local and exactly matches with the adaptation challenge. There's no need to upscale it to match models and no need to downscale it to address the challenges at the local level.
Distinguished panel members, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning. It is my great pleasure to join you today in the opening of the Asia-Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Forum 2012. I understand that this is the second in the series which started last year. I have also learned that this forum is now becoming the largest gathering of adaptation and development practitioners. This forum brings together policymakers, donors, researchers, representatives from different countries to share emerging insights and innovations in mainstreaming climate change adaptation into development priorities. The adverse impacts of climate change are among the most important challenges of our time. The severe flooding last year in Thailand is a stark indication of the magnitude of the problem, which should not be repeated if we pursue a more sustainable development path. The Asia and Pacific region accounts for 60% of the world's population. The region plays an important role in the global supply chain. This region, also known for its diverse ecosystem, such as coral reefs, mangroves, seagrass beds, and rainforests. The region is very diverse, as it comprises least developed countries, small island developing countries, countries with low-lying coastal area and islands, and landlocked countries.
At the very outset, let me thank Dr. Pithaya Pukaman. I think your speech was excellent. It really sets the right tone. I also like to acknowledge the Ambassador for Climate Change from Sweden, Madam. Good to see you. Mr. Kajihara, and all my friends here. Good morning. I and my colleagues represented here, many of them are very delighted to be here in Bangkok. I see Nasim Ahmad and flood here in Thailand. It only reminds that a single event like flood, for whatever reason it might be, natural disaster or climate or man-made, whatever it may be, a single event like this could make so much impact on their lives and their property and get the GDP down significantly. I mean, just one. And we now are working with the Royal Government of Thailand on how to do the rehabilitation exercise together. Based on the scientific study, and our ambassador from Switzerland said it, the IPCC report which is cited, that there are going to be more such events. I mean, just the one we saw in Thailand, there are going to be more such frequent and severe natural disasters, and they will complicate the challenge of achieving sustainable development in Asia. Well, Asia is growing at this point in time. As the region's economies become increasingly linked through commercial supply chains, and Thailand was really a place for supply chains for the manufacturing industry, for cars, etc. The impact of such disasters are no longer confined to the place of occurrence, but have wider regional and local impacts.
I have a favorite quote that I would like to start with, which I think makes a lot of sense in a setting like this. It's actually a quote coined by an American baseball player. You can wonder what is that has to do with adaptation, but it's a good quote. He said, "The future is not what it used to be." And I think this is true. We can learn a lot from history, but maybe not everything to tell us what the future contains. I find it astonishing that we are here today, only a few months after the floods that devastated your country. And nature sent us a stark reminder that this is definitely an area we have to look at and study and take action on a lot more. Stockholm Environment Institute, as a research organization, cannot do very much alone. We always have to work with partners. One of the challenges we have when we try to communicate science to policy and action is to understand who the stakeholders are, who are actually in the room. Do we know that today? You said, Keith, that every time we come to a meeting, there are different stakeholders, which is great. It means that adaptation is mainstream. I want to wake you up a little bit and have a very quick, very unscientific survey here in this room. Raise your hand if you represent government or government agencies. Great. Raise your hands if you represent UN agencies. Okay, raise your hands if you represent development banks or even the World Bank. International organization, not UN. Okay, so far it's a good mixture here. Research organizations and universities. Yeah, there are many of them. That's right. We have to be here. And of course, always add consultants.
I'm going to follow in Johan's footsteps and start with a quotation, this time from a Swedish professor of environmental history, Sverker Solin, in a recent speech. He said, "Humanity is in the process of reorienting itself on environmental matters." And I'm reminding by Dr. Lohani's plea for transformational change as well, which is very relevant at this juncture at which we stand. I was invited to address this conference when it was scheduled for October last year. What I would have said back then is probably very different from what I say today. And this is true for two main reasons. One is the tragic floods that swept large areas of Thailand, and the second is the outcomes of the Durban Climate Change Conference last December. Both factors have contributed to elevating the adaptation discourse to levels of higher intensity and sophistication. Many of you will be aware that the multilateral UN negotiations on climate change over the course of the past 2 years have managed to reach agreement on a comprehensive long-term package to address adaptation. This package is known as the Cancun Adaptation Framework. It was adopted in December 2010 and was operationalized in Durban in December 2011. The framework enables the promotion of new action reflecting different facets of the adaptation discourse. These range from national adaptation planning and the enhancement of the existing knowledge infrastructure to enacting scaled-up financial and technological support and establishing an adaptation committee to provide high-level policy guidance on adaptation. The framework also includes a work program on loss and damage, which focuses on all facets of risk management in the climate change context. And this is an area that Ambassador Lindstedt highlighted as particularly important, especially the precautionary and preventive measures to build resilient societies. It is also especially significant against the backdrop of the floods in Thailand that sadly resulted in 400 deaths, displacement of millions, and physical damage estimated at $46 billion. Of these, insured losses are valued at between $15 and $20 billion.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished participants and excellencies. On behalf of the Korean Environment Institute, I am very pleased to welcome you to the Asia-Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Forum 2012. I'd like also to express my sincere appreciation to all people and sponsoring institutions concerned who have made significant contribution to make this forum possible. Climate change is an undeniable fact now. Extreme weather events, including heat waves, droughts, typhoons, and heavy rainfall events, are more frequently experienced in all of the Asia-Pacific region. As we all know, just we saw, Thailand also suffered from the worst flooding last year, which led to postponing of this event up to now. Unfortunately, Asia and the Pacific region is expected to be vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, with its heavily populated coastlines, large agricultural sectors, and large section of population living on just $2 or $1 a day. However, our response to climate change are still in its infancy. There is an urgent need for improvement of our adaptive capacity. The co-organizer of this forum, the Regional Climate Change Adaptation Knowledge Platform for Asia and the Asia-Pacific Adaptation Network, have been doing a wonderful job to enhance adaptive capacity of the region by generating and exchanging knowledge and experiences on climate change adaptations. Korea Environment Institute, as a partner of Asia-Pacific Adaptation Network, also actively takes part in collaborative actions in the regions. As a head of one institution, I am well aware that it is extremely a difficult job to hold a big event like this. I'd like to thank the organizers and sponsors once again for this wonderful event possible at the most opportune moment. I'm looking forward to all your active participants in sharing knowledge and experiences, as well as networking for further cooperation. It is my hope that you will be able to carry home useful ideas and insights that will help you proceed with adaptation actions in your country. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to participate in this forum as a youth representative. I'd like to start with a farmer's quote from my country. We did not buy seeds. We separated seeds from the present harvest for next year, and following this practice for ages. But something had changed. I kept 40 kg of seed and sowed half of it. But the seed dried in the field. Not a single seed germinated. I now have less than 10 kg left that the family is eating. Now I'm thinking whether I should feed the family or wait for the rain. In both cases, there will be nothing to eat for the next year. This is a recurrent story among the millions of poor and vulnerable people around the world. In many places, people are struggling for a drop of water, while other areas are devastated by floods and landslides. Disasters are more frequent and severe. The host city itself experienced the largest flood over 50 years, which forced to postpone the event. Glaciers are melting rapidly, and glaciers lakes are on the verge of outburst. On the other hand, most of the impacted people from this crisis are not aware of its causes. These various global changes interact with climate and already are inducing migration, forcing many people to move in search of a better future. I believe that we are gathered here to discuss and find ways to cope with climate change, the biggest challenge of our generation. As a young citizen from a least developed country and representing the voice of youth, I'd like to raise some concern on climate change adaptation. The global climate change negotiations that have been running since 1992 have not delivered real and meaningful outcomes due to weak political commitment of global leaders. The problems and threats have grown for all the living creatures on Earth. The issue of climate change is about sustainability, equity, justice, and right to survival. Those countries who have not contributed to the causes are suffering the most and have the largest need for adaptation. We, the young people, are finding our future more uncertain and unpredictable, and the future generation may not find this earth livable. Therefore, based on the principle of equity and justice, developed countries must compensate to the countries whose contribution to climate change is negligible, to the young who inherit these problems, and the next generation who have not even been born.